The deafening roar of jet engines thundered above the sprawling B-52 base, shaking the ground beneath like an earthquake. Smoke twisted and curled through the morning sky as alarms blared across the compound. Amid the chaos, a lone figure sprinted. Through the dusty corridors, her breath ragged, eyes wide with terror. Emily Carter wasn't supposed to be here. Just hours ago, she had been dismissed from the base, humiliated in front of everyone, told she didn't belong. But now, as flames licked the edges of the hangars and soldiers shouted orders over the crackle of radio static, Emily ran toward the disaster she never expected to face. She didn't know how it started. Some said a mechanical failure. Others whispered sabotage. What she did know was this: lives depended on what she did next. "Emily, get out of here!" someone yelled from behind, but she couldn't stop. Not now. The fire was spreading fast, engulfing the base's command center. Thick black smoke burned her lungs as she pushed forward, past frantic men in uniform and frantic women trying to help. She spotted the crew of a B-52 bomber trapped inside one of the burning hangars, their escape routes blocked by debris. Without thinking, Emily dove into the thick smoke. The world was a blur of heat and noise. She could hear the screams, the shouts, and a high-pitched ringing that filled her head. Panic threatened to overtake her, but she forced herself to focus. She found the first pilot unconscious and bleeding from a gash on his forehead. "Hold on," she whispered, dragging him toward an exit. Flames crackled dangerously close, and the structure groaned as metal twisted. Emily's heart pounded. This was no place for a civilian, much less someone recently humiliated and cast aside. But she couldn't abandon them. Not after everything. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the building, knocking her to the ground. Pain shot through her leg, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. The pilot was counting on her. Outside, the other crew members were struggling against thick smoke and falling debris. Emily shouted, "This way, follow me." Her voice was hoarse but determined. As they stumbled toward safety, Emily's mind raced. How had she ended up here? Just yesterday, she had been mocked for trying to prove herself at the base. Officers had laughed at her mistakes, calling her incompetent and a burden. The humiliation was fresh, the wounds still smarting, but now no one cared about her past. All that mattered was survival. She reached the open ground, just as another blast sent a shockwave rippling through the air. Soldiers around her shielded their eyes and ducked. Emily collapsed beside the pilot, gasping for breath. For a moment, everything froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then came the sirens, urgent, demanding help. Emily's hands trembled as she pressed a rag against the pilot's wound. She looked up at the sky, darkened by smoke and ash, and felt something stir deep inside her, a fierce determination to fight, to prove her worth, not just to the base, but to herself. Just days before, Emily had arrived at the B-52 base, a small Air Force installation tucked away in a remote desert valley. She was a maintenance technician, newly assigned and eager to show her skills. But the military world was harsh, especially for a woman like her, who came from a modest background and had no connections. From the moment she stepped onto the base, she had faced cold stares, whispered comments, and open disdain. "Why is she even here?" some had murmured. "She'll never keep up with the men." Emily tried to ignore the jeers and focus on her work, but mistakes slipped through under pressure. A missed bolt, a late inspection. The officers were quick to point out every flaw. At a staff meeting just 2 days ago, her supervisor had snapped. "You're risking lives with your carelessness," he said sharply. "Maybe this isn't the place for you." Emily had felt tears burn in her eyes, but she held them back. She wanted to prove them wrong. Back in the present, chaos swirled. Around the burning base, emergency crews raced past Emily, shouting orders and coordinating evacuations. Smoke darkened the horizon as the fire consumed more hangars. Despite the danger, Emily refused to leave. She had seen something, a flicker of movement in the burning wreckage, and she had to check it out. Her injured leg protested, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She reached a collapsed section where a young crew member was trapped under a beam, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Help me!" he gasped. With a grunt, Emily pushed at the beam, using every ounce of strength. The metal shifted just enough for the man to crawl free. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. Emily smiled faintly. "Let's get you out of here." As they staggered back toward the perimeter, Emily's thoughts flickered to her family far away, wondering if she would ever see them again. The danger was real. The fire, the explosions. It could end everything. But she wouldn't give up. Not now. Hours later, after the worst of the fire was contained, Emily sat on a makeshift cot in the medical tent, her leg bandaged and her face smudged with soot. Around her, others were treated for injuries. No one spoke much about what had happened. The base commander had arrived, face grim, surveying the damage. Emily's heart sank. Would this disaster be used against her? Would they blame her, or worse, ignore her? But then a nurse approached her quietly. "You did good today," she said softly. "You saved lives." Emily looked up, surprised. No one had ever said that before. The days that followed brought more challenges. Investigations began, questions were asked, and Emily's role became a quiet mystery. Some officers praised her bravery in private, but public recognition was scarce. Still, Emily felt something changing inside her. The humiliation that had weighed so heavily before was starting to lift. She had faced fire and danger, and come through. Now, the story was no longer about mistakes or doubts. It was about courage, survival, and unexpected strength, and this was just the beginning. But the mystery of the fire lingered. How did it start? Was it truly an accident? Emily wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. There was more to uncover. And if she was to become the hero the base never expected, she'd have to face more than flames and fear. She'd have to face the truth. The sun had barely risen when Emily awoke in the quiet of the medical tent. The burn smell still lingered faintly in the air, mixed with antiseptic and the distant murmurs of the base returning to life. But for Emily, nothing was the same anymore. She wasn't the woman who had stumbled into the smoke and flames just hours before. Something had changed deep inside her. She flexed her injured leg carefully. The pain was sharp but manageable, a reminder of the ordeal she had survived. Around her, the tent was filled with other injured personnel, their faces, a mix of relief, exhaustion, and worry. The fire had taken a toll on the base and its people, and the aftershocks of the disaster were just beginning. Emily sat up slowly, her mind already racing ahead. She knew there were questions to be answered, questions no one seemed ready to ask out loud yet. The official investigation into the fire had started quietly, but the atmosphere on the base had shifted. Suspicion hung thick in the air like the smoke that had recently cleared. Whispers spread in hushed tones. Was it sabotage, a careless mistake, or something far worse? Emily found herself drawn into the swirling mystery despite trying to stay. On the sidelines, she had been on the edge of the disaster, the only civilian who had dared to run toward danger rather than away from it. That alone made her a subject of curiosity and, in some circles, resentment. At the command center, a group of officers gathered around a large table covered in maps and photos of the burned hangars. Major Tom Reynolds, the base commander, led the discussion. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on Emily, who had been quietly observing from a corner. "Miss Carter," he said, nodding at her, "we need to hear your account of what happened. Your actions may be critical to understanding the sequence of events." Emily nodded, swallowing hard. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not in front of so many military personnel. She took a deep breath and began to recount everything. The alarms, the smoke, the trapped pilots, The explosions. She described how she had pushed through the fire and debris, and the moment she had rescued the young crew member trapped under the beam. Major Reynolds listened intently, jotting notes. When she finished, he asked, "Did you see anything unusual before or during the fire? Anything that seemed out of place?" Emily thought hard. "No, except maybe a strange smell, like something burning before the flames appeared. And I remember hearing voices, arguing in the control tower shortly before the fire." The room grew quiet. An argument in the control tower was unusual, and the possibility of a deliberate act began to form. Outside the command center, whispers turned to speculation. Emily caught snippets of conversation as she walked back toward her quarters. "She's just lucky. A civilian interfering where? She doesn't belong. Maybe she's hiding something." The coldness stung, but Emily refused to let it shake her. She was here to find the truth, not to win popularity. That night, unable to sleep, Emily sat by the small window in her room, staring at the stars above the desert base. The vast, silent sky contrasted sharply with the chaos of the past days. Her thoughts wandered to the pilot she had saved, Lieutenant Mark Davis. She wondered how he was doing. The faces of the trapped crew haunted her. They had trusted her when no one else would. She realized this was more than just survival. It was about connection, trust, and uncovering a deeper mystery that threatened everyone on the base. The following day, Emily was approached by Lieutenant Davis himself. His face was still marked by the ordeal, but carried a quiet strength. "Emily," he said, offering a hand, "I want to thank you. Again, you saved my life." She shook his hand, feeling a strange warmth in the gesture. "I'm just glad you're okay," she replied. Mark hesitated, then added, "There's something else. I don't think the fire was an accident." Emily's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" Mark glanced around nervously. "I overheard a conversation before the fire. Some officers were arguing about a secret project. Something that could change everything here. I think someone wanted to cover it up." The mystery deepened. Emily knew now that the disaster was more than flames and smoke. It was a cover for something hidden in the shadows. Determined to get to the bottom of the truth, Emily and Mark began to quietly gather information. They met in secret, sharing what little they could without drawing suspicion. Emily's technical skills gave her access to parts of the base others ignored. She examined maintenance logs, security footage, and equipment reports, searching for clues. What she found was troubling. Several reports had been altered or deleted. Cameras in key areas had malfunctioned right before the fire. And there were unexplained power surges. It pointed to sabotage, but who would risk so much, and why? As the investigation progressed, Emily's position became more precarious. Some officers saw her as a threat, someone stirring trouble. One evening, while reviewing files late at night, she felt a shadow pass outside the door. The sudden knock startled her. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer. She locked the door, heart pounding. The base was no longer a place of safety. It was a maze of secrets and dangers. Days turned into weeks. Emily's leg healed, but the emotional scars grew. She found an unexpected ally in Sergeant Lisa Hernandez, a tough but fair soldier who had witnessed the fire. "We can't trust everyone here," Lisa warned. "Some people want this covered up at any cost." Together, they pieced together a hidden story, a classified weapons project that involved the B-52s. Something had gone wrong, and the fire was meant to hide the failure, but exposing it meant risking everything: careers, lives, and perhaps Emily's own future. One night, Emily received an anonymous note slipped under her door. "Stop digging or face the consequences." Fear and determination warred inside her. She knew backing down was safer, but she also knew the truth needed to come out. The next morning, the base was on high alert. Another fire was reported, smaller but close to the research wing. Emily rushed to help, her past fears replaced by resolve. This time, she wouldn't run from the fire. The flames this time revealed more than destruction. They exposed the cracks in a system built on secrets and lies. Emily's bravery became the spark that ignited change. But the cost was high. Friendships fractured, trust shattered, and danger lurked in every shadow. Still, through it all, Emily held on to hope. Hope that survival was more than escape. It was about fighting for truth and justice. The early morning sun cast long shadows over the B-52 base, its rays struggling to break through the lingering smoke from the recent fires. The once bustling compound was now scarred and quiet, like a battlefield freshly fought over. Yet beneath the surface, the tension was thick, pulsing like an invisible current among the officers and staff. Emily Carter stood near the edge of the base, watching soldiers move busily, but with heavy eyes. She felt the weight of everything pressing down on her, the mystery of the fires, the threats, and the growing realization that her life was changing forever. The note she had received, "Stop digging or face the consequences," was not just a warning. It was a promise. In the days since the second fire, Emily and Sergeant Lisa Hernandez had formed an unlikely alliance, two women bound by a shared determination to uncover the truth. Together, they began piecing together fragments of evidence that pointed to something larger than sabotage or accident. There were whispers about secret weapons tests, off-the-record experiments, and a dangerous gamble with technology no one fully understood. But revealing these secrets wasn't easy. Their investigations were met with stone walls and silence. Reports were locked away. Witnesses were intimidated, and any attempt to ask questions was met with cold stares or veiled threats. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket one afternoon as she was poring over documents in the cramped office she had claimed as her own. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old hangar, midnight, alone." Her heart thumped fiercely. She knew ignoring it could be safer, but curiosity and a hunger for truth pushed her forward. That night, under a blanket of stars, Emily crept toward the decrepit hangar at the edge of the base. The place was abandoned, its rusted metal walls and broken windows whispering secrets from another time. As she stepped inside, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Emily," the man said softly, "I'm glad you came." He was tall, wearing a faded jacket that bore the insignia of an intelligence officer. His eyes were cautious but earnest. "My name's Daniel," he said. "I know about the fires and the project." Emily's breath caught. "Why tell me?" she asked. "Because no one else will," Daniel replied, "and because you're the only one who can help stop what's coming." Daniel explained that the base had been secretly testing a new kind of weapon, a device designed to enhance the B-52's capabilities, making it more powerful than ever before. But the project was unstable. The fires were cover-ups for failed tests that threatened to destroy the entire base. "People have been silenced," Daniel warned. "And now they want to make sure no one else knows." Emily's mind reeled. This was bigger than she imagined. The stakes were higher, but fear was quickly replaced by resolve. "If this is true, we have to expose it," she said firmly. Together, Emily, Daniel, and Lisa began gathering proof. They hacked into secured computers, retrieved hidden files, and recorded secret meetings. Each discovery was more alarming than the last. They found evidence of cover-ups, fake reports, and dangerous experiments conducted without proper safety measures. The lives lost in the fires were no accident. One night, while reviewing data in the shadows of the command center, they were nearly caught. Guards patrolled, and voices echoed down the hallways. Emily's heart pounded as they hid in a cramped supply closet, holding their breath. The risk was real, but the truth was worth it. The base commander, Major Reynolds, remained an enigma. Officially, he led the investigation with a firm hand, but Emily suspected he knew more than he let on. His cold demeanor and evasive answers only deepened her mistrust. She confided in Daniel. "I don't think he's on our side." Daniel nodded grimly. Powerful people protect their own. Tensions rose when Lieutenant Mark Davis returned to duty. His recovery was slow, but his spirit was strong. He joined Emily's group, sharing his own suspicions and first-hand knowledge. Together, they formed a small but determined team, each bringing skills and courage to the fight. One afternoon, Emily received another anonymous message. "They're watching you. Be careful." She no longer felt alone, but the danger was closing in. Paranoia crept into every moment. Shadows seemed to move, phones were tapped, and trusted faces showed hidden smiles. The turning point came when they uncovered a planned test, scheduled for the next week, a test that could cause catastrophic damage if it went wrong. Emily and her team knew they had to act fast. They decided to confront Major Reynolds directly, armed with their evidence. The meeting was tense. In the cold, sterile conference room, Major Reynolds sat behind his desk, expression unreadable. Emily stepped forward, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "We know about the project," she said. "We know about the cover-ups and the dangers. This has to stop." Major Reynolds leaned back, a slow smile curling on his lips. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "This project is the future. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary." Emily's anger flared. "Sacrifices? People died because of your secrets." The room fell silent. The confrontation ended without resolution, but it marked a shift. Emily and her allies realized they were fighting a hidden war within the base, a battle for truth against power and deception. In the days that followed, the base became a tinderbox of tension. Emily's warnings spread quietly among the ranks, and more soldiers began questioning orders. But the leadership tightened control, imposing curfews and restricting movement. Emily's resolve only grew stronger. She knew the risks, but also understood that her survival and the survival of many others depended on exposing the truth. Late one night, as Emily was preparing to meet Daniel and Lisa to plan their next move, her door was kicked open. A group of officers stormed in, their faces set and unforgiving. "You're coming with us," the lead officer said. Emily's heart froze. The warning had come true. What happened next would change everything. The harsh fluorescent lights in the interrogation room flickered as Emily was pushed inside. The cold metal chair beneath her felt unforgiving. The door slammed shut, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts. Her mind ran over the past weeks, the fires, the secrets, the danger. She knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The truth was out there, but so was the risk of being silenced forever. The silence was broken when the door creaked open, and Major Tom Reynolds stepped in, flanked by two stern-looking officers. His eyes bore into Emily's, in calm but filled with a weight of authority. "Miss Carter," he began, his voice low, "you have been causing quite a stir, interfering with classified operations, spreading misinformation, and putting lives at risk." Emily held his gaze, refusing to show fear. "I'm only trying to save lives. The fires weren't accidents, and you know it." Major Reynolds sighed, then leaned forward. "You're young and idealistic, but sometimes the truth is a luxury we can't afford." Emily's heart pounded. "Sacrifices? People died because of your luxury." He regarded her for a long moment. "You don't understand the bigger picture. This project, it's about national security, about keeping us ahead in a dangerous world." Emily's thoughts flashed. To the injured pilots, the scared soldiers, and the families waiting for answers. If this project is so important, why cover it up? Why risk lives without warning? Major Reynolds looked away. The project failed in ways no one expected. The fires were accidents, tragic, yes, but necessary to protect classified information. She shook her head. No, they were preventable, and people deserved to know the truth. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then, unexpectedly, one of the officers stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the table. "We have records, Miss Carter. Everything you've uncovered, and more." Emily's eyes widened. "Why show me this now?" The Major's expression softened just a bit. "Because you're not the enemy. You're the conscience of this base, and perhaps the key to fixing what's broken." As Emily flipped through the documents, she saw reports of failed experiments, internal memos, warning of safety issues, and emails where concerns were ignored. The truth was buried beneath layers of secrecy and denial. For the first time, she understood the depth of the cover-up and the reasons behind it. In the following days, Emily worked with Major Reynolds and the officers willing to face the truth. Together, they drafted a report to send to higher authorities, outlining the failures and the steps needed to prevent future disasters. It wasn't easy. Resistance came from many quarters. Some wanted to bury the report. Others feared reprisals. But Emily's voice, backed by evidence and allies, grew louder. Meanwhile, life on the base slowly returned to normal. But the scars remained. The rebuilt hangars stood as reminders of the fire and the price of secrets. Emily found new strength in the support she received from soldiers like Lisa Hernandez and Lieutenant Mark Davis, who had stood by her through every twist. Together, they held memorials for the lost and worked to heal the wounded, both physically and emotionally. Outside the military walls, the story leaked to the public. News outlets picked up the tale of the B-52 base fires, the secret project, and the brave civilian who had risked everything. Emily became a reluctant symbol of courage and truth, her story inspiring others to stand up against injustice and secrecy. But the greatest change was personal. Emily realized that survival wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about facing it head-on, standing for what was right, and refusing to be silenced. The fire had tested her in unimaginable ways, but it also revealed her strength, resilience, and purpose. In the quiet moments, as the desert wind swept across the base, Emily would sometimes think back to the first day of the fire, the chaos, the fear, the desperate hope. She knew the road ahead would be long, but she was ready, because sometimes the simplest act of courage can change the course of many lives. The story of Emily Carter and the B-52 base is a testament to the power of truth and resilience. It shows how one person's courage can ignite change, even in the darkest moments. Secrets and lies may protect for a time, but ultimately, honesty and bravery are what heal wounds and build a better future. No matter the odds, standing up for what is right is never wasted effort. The end.